Welcome to our Substack Live with Jen from Higher with Jen. And today we're going to be talking about burnout, life changes, moving into a more aligned life, pushing through fear, and all the things that Jen did that I hope someday I can also do. So Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, it's wonderful to be live on Substack with you, Danielle, and talking about these really juicy topics that I think a lot of people can relate to. I think especially those who are connected to this idea of shifting in consciousness and elevating to more authenticity, which is really what happens when we start to expand spiritually. So what happened to me was, in a nutshell, I started to recognize my dissatisfaction in my career, mostly because I was just complaining a lot. I was unhappy. I was unfulfilled, even though I had given my career 150%. And I was, you could say on the outside, just ticking all the boxes. I really had it all. I was very happy and grateful, but I was not fulfilled. And that fulfillment started to really eat away at me, or that unfulfillment started to eat away at me. And, at the same time, I was like a rising leader and always leaning on my intellect, very dynamic career in healthcare pathology. And my mind was always on. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like I had any joy, I guess you could say. I started using spiritual practices to support myself. And the more that I did that, the more I spiritually opened, the more difficult it actually became to deny how unhappy I was in my career. And a lot of it was not easy to put into words. Mm-hmm. It was a feeling. And, I've spent a lot of my life spiritually curious, but I edged all. Yeah, I bet, because I've seen your work online. And so that spiritual curiosity got pushed aside and I went all in on my career. Because, it was service-oriented work. There's lots of need for improvement in healthcare. So I just kept plugging myself into where there was a need. And there was always that teacher in me. There was always that person in me that wanted to pursue excellence. And there was always that part of me that wanted to be an amazing leader, but always, I guess, turned towards books and courses and teachers to develop myself to be that leader. And so I was always missing, I think, that inner confidence, that inner authority. And Danielle, I know you're in healthcare as well. And I think you can agree with me. There's that real corporate hierarchy that can exist within healthcare. We're all at different places with this. And I just began to really experience a crestfallen feeling of realizing that I did not feel that I fit into that leadership model. I did not want to rub shoulders with some of my leaders, sorry to say. I'm always somebody to say the hard thing, and to point out the truth and to stand for honor and integrity. And there were a couple of things that happened in my career that led me to feel that I just wasn't in good company, I guess you could say. And it's hard to say that because I know I'm being a bit cryptic, but the gist of it is that I just no longer wanted to continue in my career, and it kind of came crashing down all around me. And so as we're digging into today, we're going to be talking about what happens when we want to move into new work and we're being called strongly to move into new work, but we're afraid, or we're not sure how we're going to make it happen, or we don't think we have the skills, or of course, financially, this is a huge consideration as well. And so I took those steps, and I'm still taking those steps. And I said to Danielle when she wanted to talk today, I was like, well, I'm not a shining example of success as we might call success as an entrepreneur. I'm on my entrepreneurial journey, and I've learned a lot about what that means for me. And so what I do now is I teach authentic success. I teach it through the spiritual perspective that we can only be authentic when we're healing, and when you're healing, you're forced to look at who you are as a full person, and we are spiritual, we're physical, we're mental, we're emotional. So I use the yoga path to really, as well as some of the Eastern early Buddhist practices. Hinduism has been really important to me, but Buddhist, Taoist, studied energy healing, medical intuition. And really what happened for me initially was, well, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to teach success because I really want to see people succeed. But over the years, through my own healing and through my own personal development and through facing my fears, I've had to learn that success needs to be reframed. Excuse me. And I really care about our young people, and it's been difficult to get in front of them because of corporate hierarchy and school board red tape. But I'm slowly getting there. I'll stop there so we can dig in.
No, thank you. I have seen in my own journey as a nursing leader that I got primarily where I am now through masculine work. So a lot of pushing, striving, meeting goals, meeting metrics. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, oh, your body starts to show symptoms of burnout. And I know you had a lot of physical burnout.
Yes.
I experienced a lot of that this year. And just ruminating in my brain, like there has to be a different way. And I can see it. I can see it, but reality hasn't caught up to my mind yet. And so I've started to bring some of that feminine into my work. I care for moms and babies and primarily female staff. And so I am allowed to express some of that feminine, like mothering, caring in my work. But the actual success part of my job is very masculine.
Yeah.
And so talk to us a little bit about the physical burnout that you started to experience when you were like, okay, what I'm doing actually no longer aligns with my vessel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like listening to the body is something we tend to not do very well, right? And so it's great to really dig in on what are some of those symptoms of burnout. I don't know if that matters, but I don't know that I fully reached burnout, but I was definitely in a nosedive. And the biggest symptom, something I love to talk and teach about is resistance. Mm-hmm. And resistance is really just not wanting what is. And there's a lot of us who will go into our work and come home and we'll complain. We'll complain. We'll ruminate. We will feel like there's a lot of problems to solve, you know? And burnout is really when we've been carrying that for a while and it starts to feel like withdrawal. Like we're going to stop trying, or that inspiration or that intrinsic motivation starts to shut down. Cognitively, we can struggle. It can become very difficult to complete tasks. We can start to feel as though we are not breathing right. You know, that was one of the things that happened to me, where I was really shallowly breathing for a while. And then breath work became really important to me, and just understanding. And so bringing the science behind breathing to my pranayama teaching has been really important to me, because I want to say almost all of us will come to spiritual practices first from the level of the intellect. I really felt like, again, with that self-confidence piece, like I had hopes and dreams for my career. And so you're going to start to feel probably grief around what you thought you wanted, grief around what seems hard to get, grief around the person that you thought you were, or that you want to be. So all of these things. And what was really valuable for me was learning about the piece around compassion, because like yourself, just a very high achiever in life myself. lots of academic accolades and really leaning on the intellect, because I do like to understand. That's just my nature. We're all different, but my nature always was curious, analytical. And so I turned that on myself and became very analytical about, well, why do I feel this way and how can I improve? And initially, there was a lot of that traditional success. Well, I just need to know how to prioritize better. I just need to know how to work smarter, not harder. And so, yes, lots of value in that. But like you say, it can become so heavy on the productivity side and the pushing and the striving that eventually the person that's running the machine starts to essentially become almost like an opponent.
Mm-hmm.
We can really edge ourselves out. And this is an area of passion for me because I've lived it and I know that place. But also, I'm passionate about seeing people thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And in healthcare, there's a lot of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt personally in my own career that there was not enough personal honor. And one of the pieces, like the corporate part of my business, is to go in and help teams understand what it means to work within an honorable system, to have honorable collegial relationships, to talk to leaders about what does it mean to honor your employee and what does it mean to honor yourself as a leader. And I use the word honor because I feel like it's a great word. It holds a lot of essence. It's almost like there's a power there, not necessarily force, but there's a humility and there's integrity. And so these are the things that I started to bring towards myself with burnout. And eventually I found that I was able to clear some of that mental noise, especially with the compassion and just really softening into my experience and really finding the space to hear the truth, because that was really hard at first. To hear the truth, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think you try to justify the truth in your mind or find other reasons, other things to say, other things to do, and a lot of denial, I think, that I've had to work through. And I am actively in my career and happy in my career. At the same time, I also know, like, I want to build something of my own someday.
Okay.
But remaining sustainable until I can get there is like work I'm actively in.
Because you want out. So that resistance is what you're actively working with.
Yes.
And I think that's really a courageous thing to say.
Yeah. And so I know that you had said your spiritual awakening really, did it kind of trigger all of this to come to bubble up to the surface, that resistance, those physical symptoms, or was it kind of parallel with your journey?
It's almost like a sandwich. Mm-hmm. So now it's easier for me to look back and know that the work that I'm doing now has always been a part of me, and I accept and believe that it's part of my dharmic path, so my soul journey, my contract. As I said, was always very spiritually curious. And so I think having that student mindset and that willingness to look beyond the black and white of healthcare, of contemporary science, to include more of what I think we really need in order to heal. I mean, in pathology, what we do is we handle cancer all day. We're working with human tissues. We're dissecting them, and we're looking at microscope slides, and we're testing those tissues. And so I was constantly surrounded by disease. But I also found that there was toxicity in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I was not only a very sensitive person, but that this was actually a thing. Like there's such a thing as called being highly sensitive, HSP. It's also known as empathic. And the threads beyond being empathic, and an empath just means it's I've heard a statistic like 2 to 4% of the population. I mean, you can have empathy, but an empath is somebody that feels far beyond their own feelings. They're feeling everything else around them. And this is actually part of my intuitive package. So I started to manage my sensitivity. I started to manage my body, my mind. I started to use spiritual practices and spiritual knowledge to understand how to support myself to be resilient and continue in my career, knowing that I was feeling so much discomfort. And I think that that piece right there can take us so far, especially as a nurse yourself, having that emotional intelligence and managing other nurses and being the example. I mean, we're all leaders in every way, because everyone around us is also sensitive. We are not just mental. We are energy. And so we feel each other's stuff. So working in healthcare can be a heavy load on a sensitive person. Mm-hmm. So once I started to manage my sensitivity, manage my mind, manage my physical body, things really started to settle down for me. Mm-hmm. And clarity became much more possible. And I always say, I mean, the hardest thing for me, a heavy intellect, hugely analytical, planned my whole life out, what I wanted to do. The hardest thing for me was to relinquish that grip and to relinquish that control and to, as I said, soften into that place where I can accept this moment that I'm in and trust that if I continue to rinse and repeat by, embodying myself, being compassionate with myself, then the next best step will reveal itself to me. Fear has always been a problem for me. Even though when I look at it in a intellectual way, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But I was bullied as a young girl. I was also bullied in the home. And I was bullied even all the way through my career and just, being, I guess you could say, someone who will speak up hard truths, will, hold my integrity. Who was academically inclined, who was bravely trying to be a leader with always good intentions. So you're going to get attention, unwanted attention. And, for example, in with my previous employer, I was part of merging 3 labs. Well, not all people wanted to play nice in the sandbox. I all of a sudden had new people under me who didn't want me there, who were angry about the merger. And so we're always sort of navigating everybody's energy coming toward us. And I became very self-conscious, and it gave me performance anxiety. And what I wanted more than anything in my heart of hearts was to stand comfortably in front of people and share and support and lead. And so I was always trying to figure out how on earth was I going to recover myself enough with all this fear to leave what I'm an expert at and go do something that I know nothing about. And so again, I really had to double down on my spiritual practices, which continue to support me today to do what I need to do.
I think part of the fear for me, and this has come in layers and spirals, is that once you know something, you can't go back. That whole part of you is gone. And there are times, so many times, even still to this day, and I imagine probably this will just be my journey, where I just want to go back, but I can't. I know more now. I am expanded. I know better now, and you can't go back. And so those old coping mechanisms that I thought served me that really didn't, I know no longer do. I can't lean on those. I have to lead a different way. I have to take care of my body in a different way. I have to have different spiritual practices, different spiritual hygiene. And every rung of the ladder that you climb, the more you know, the more you grow, which is great. But there is this like death of this old part of you that served a purpose, and you can't go back. And I suffered a lot of abuse as a child and realized probably, I don't know, a few years ago, just through family life and through relationships, how much of my life that little girl was still running. And it was a lot, a
Yes.
lot. And now once you see that, you can't unsee it. It calls for integrity in the way that you live, because once I know that's the 8-year-old version of me talking, when I go to have that conversation again, it's my responsibility that time then to rewire that pattern and have the regulated part of me speak. If I know that alcohol is no longer serving me, I can't continue to drink it and think that it's okay, it's harmless. It's not. And so those things have been an evolution for me in a way to care for myself. But caring for myself and caring for others haven't come together for me. They've come on this like parallel journey. And I'm hoping that, they will at some point merge, but I don't think that I have maybe the regulation and the capacity I can care for other people really well, but myself kind of suffers, or I can care for myself really well, and then other areas of my life suffer. And so have you had success merging those two things? I know that isn't something I told you I was going to talk about, but it just came to my mind.
Yeah, no, those are really great discussion questions. And I think just, couple of archetypes come to play when you're working in healthcare, when you're female as well. Not to say that our male counterparts are not as holding as much of the responsibility in terms of really pleasing others. I feel like there's that caregiver in archetype that tends to show up in healthcare, and it's doing for others, doing for others. And it's beautiful that you were able to notice, and I think that this is really the biggest piece, this biggest transformational piece, that we can actually observe what's happening. That observational piece of seeing the dichotomy, of seeing the change, of noticing yourself reacting differently, of noticing that you want to react the way you used to, but you choose instead to react in the new way. Like, these are all huge pieces that demonstrate expansion. And the reality is we've got a life to live. We've got responsibilities to keep up with. Spiritual awakening with children, for example, has been my experience. And, there's a big part of me that wants to be alone more, to go deeper into meditation, to go deeper into spiritual practice, and I've had to share my life with a family and a life partner. And so to get back to your question, I think that more than anything, and I really believe this, more than anything, the more we honor ourselves and care for ourselves, the better that we can do absolutely everything else in our lives. And that includes leadership. And I think what happens in those instances, when we look at old patterns in the workplace, for example, of, maybe meeting everybody else's needs before finally taking a break, is that we reinforce those ways of doing things every time we choose to deny our self-care, to deny our honor, to deny our own needs. And I don't know if you're seeing this, Danielle. I've heard this is happening, where our younger nurses are coming onto the scene and they're taking their breaks unapologetically. They are not staying late. And all the older nurses are like,
Yeah, they take their time off. They're
just like, oh, these young nurses.
And part of me is like, okay, this is like interesting to lead. And then part of me is like, good for you, because this has to change.
It has to change. And I think that, that's the really messy part. That's the messy middle that we're all in. And it takes a lot of courage and leadership. And I'm sad to know that so many people are working in situations where leadership does not support honor in the workplace. And I am a huge speaker outer on topics of wellness in the workplace. And of course, I have had my own experiences, and you've had yours, working in environments that are very difficult. And so I think that, as you know, to get back to your question, I think as I continue to support my evolution and growth and become honestly self-centered, and I that's a play on words. It's not about being selfish. It's about centering the self and choosing from there. And I think if you continue to choose from there in any career, yeah, you're going to have those difficult circumstances where old paradigms will come up against you and it might not work out so well for you. You need to be prepared for that. You need to be responsible. But you can also step up to your employer and offer to be part of the solution. You can offer to change your work in a way that feels more aligned with what the needs are. And hopefully what you need is what everybody else needs too. And you're putting your hand up and you're finding opportunities to be an expression and to be an authentic expression. And we're always in our authentic expression when we are trying to care for ourselves and care for others at the same time. They are often the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's tricky though, Danielle, you're right. It is.
I feel like when I make a declaration, like this is where I'm going. Life gives me abounding options to prove who I say I am. And so that has led to varying amounts of courage and also just expansion. And I have noticed that my physical body, hasn't seemed to be able to keep up with the expansion that my soul is desiring or feeling. And so there's also this like rub of my 3D body and this soul who desires and sees so much different, and trying to stay regulated while I'm regulating for 6 children and 80 employees and 65 patients at a time and responsibilities. And so I just love how you said about centering and keeping yourself at the center, because it does. I think we were raised to think that is selfish.
Absolutely.
We were raised to think like, if you actually love and care about other people, then you meet their needs. But no one ever taught me growing up how to meet my own needs, or the fact that they were important, or it was even a thing.
Or how about how adults don't even really honor children, or even honor that they deserve to understand, or honor an explanation, or honor them to have to hear what they have to say.
And that is a whole conversation for another day, because I was raised in a home where like you didn't have opinions. They didn't matter, or no one like cared to hear. And that's been a undoing for me in my parental journey, because that was how I was wired. And just the remembrance that our children are sovereign, like eternal souls, and we are here together on a journey for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And really helped me reframe that. But those old imprints, they go deep for generations, really.
They do.
But I can feel that starting to shift.
I think that what you're saying around that integration of spiritual expansion is a really important conversation for a lot of people, perhaps a lot of people joining the live chat. You know, how do we live in the world as it is today, but not know that it needs to change, to know that we want to exit the systems. Mm-hmm. This is really, really tough, but the people like yourself and like myself, we're average everyday people. It's not like we're special, but we might be a few steps ahead in terms of understanding that there is a higher way. Mm-hmm. And weaving it into everyday life is an art for sure. And again, all I've been able to do in order to continue to show up with honesty and integrity is to just keep turning towards myself. And, you know, I read a lot of spiritual literature and a lot of ancient texts, and I've been validated, you know, especially through the yoga philosophy. Certainly, there is a lot of service that's required. And I think there's this misunderstanding, even perhaps in some religious circles, around serving others. But the only way that we can really understand how to serve and why and how it can be joyful to serve is to first serve the self. And we're all doing that by trying to heal right now. We're trying to recover who we are fully. And that's a big job, and there's a lot of teachers out there who want to tell you how to do it. And I certainly don't have all the answers, but I just know what's been working for me. And I keep sharing that. And I'm just a student and a teacher at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But, when we're not actually embodying our spirituality, there is that disconnect that occurs. And when you start to study energy anatomy and the yoga body, it explains where a lot of our illness comes from. And some of our illness is physical and some of it is energetic. And when I look back on some of my energy anatomy teachings and medical intuition, there's a strong belief that the illness, that many of the physical illnesses that we have, including an unregulated nervous system, all exists within the energetic field first. And there's a lot that we don't understand about our sovereignty. We feel like we're at the effect of everything that's going on around us. I certainly did and still struggle with this. But the more I learn about my full and true nature, the more that I integrate that, the more I make space, I make it a priority for me to include those parts of me every day so that I am embodying my spirituality. Because as you say, it is uncomfortable and it's difficult. It's difficult because we are, as you say, unlearning so much, and it is unsettling and destabilizing, And so what happens with self-realization, enlightenment, spiritual expansion, is we start to break those bonds with what we've been taught, what we've inherited, and it does create that destabilization. And we're seeing this at the level of the self, and we're seeing this at the level of the collective right now. We're seeing a lot of destabilization. And I think that we can draw on that piece of wisdom that the centered self, the true nature, is a place of great stability and strength. And really, the more we are able to cultivate that centeredness, the more we're able to bring that centered self to those difficult environments and learn how to hold it, and at least learn how to do that, as you say, that spiritual hygiene in order to clear and recover and so these are all the things that I love to talk about, because they are the things that are going to support us to continue to show up to our lives with authenticity, with resiliency, with strength, with courage. For me, like, I'm scared all the time, I swear. But I learned how to be scared. So at least I know this, and I know that if I continue to turn towards my heart and, understand that this isn't really about me, that it's about the beauty within all of us, then it helps me to soften and continue to move forward.
Tell me a little bit about fear. I have been ruminating on fear a little bit lately, that it actually is just a word. Like, it's a word that we gave meaning to. The concept that fear actually doesn't exist at all. The only reason it exists is because we gave it meaning. And so that has helped me a little bit in times where I feel fear. But I know you had to push through a lot of fear to transition from the workplace to doing what you're doing now. And you've touched on it a little bit, but how do you consistently face your fear to move forward? Because I think fear, and fear of all things, fear of being seen, fear of failure, fear that it won't work out, and fears that we don't even know exist.
Fear of success.
Fear of success.
Yeah.
Fear of being really wealthy and not knowing what to do with it. Like, fear of all of the things, judgment.
Definitely.
How did you work through those on your transition to where you are now?
Well, there were a lot of things, but the thing that comes up the most for me is that heart-based work. And I know that um, just those words alone might be a little bit inaccessible. The best thing that I can do to explain to you is to say that, you know, at least for me, and I think for most people, you can have really powerful spiritual experiences that, you know, can change you, but you still carry so much programming and so much conditioning that it generally will feel like a long process to release fear, at least in my experience. And what I did with fear was to really just sit with it. For the longest time, I was trying to work around it. I was trying to ignore it. I was trying to heal from it, you know. But it wasn't until I sat with it and I listened and I cared and I loved and I nurtured and I promised, you know, that I was able to soften a lot of that sharp fear. It's still there. You know, I really think that my fear comes from not feeling safe being myself.
Mhm.
And we all have different fears, you know, and not having the coping mechanisms, I guess you could say, and not having the healing around that, and going into adulthood carrying that sense of like, well, if I just, you know, if I just do it all like this, and I do it really like perfectly like this, then I don't need to worry about those parts of me that are afraid.
Mhm.
So I think that true success is actually healing
Mhm.
the self, and going into those healing modalities, knowing that it's the greatest gift you can give yourself, which is to recover your heart. When I talk about recovering the heart, I really just mean bringing back more love and compassion to all of you and all that you do. And the more that I was able to do that for myself, the more I was able to recognize that when I was in a heart space, when I was planning through the heart, when I was supporting myself through the heart, that it was very difficult for me to also carry fear. Of course, there's that old saying that you got to feel the fear and do it anyway. And okay, sure. I mean, I do agree to a point, but you're going to keep putting yourself through the ringer until you start to learn how to support yourself away from fear. Now, I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but let me know if you have something more specific that you'd like me to touch on regarding fear.
I think everything you said really reaffirms. And sometimes people just need to hear things from different people and in multiple ways. They say the average adult needs to hear something 7 times before it sinks in. And
Yeah.
so many things that you're saying are resonating with me because I have a deep belief that we are all one. We are just each a fractal piece of God's source energy. And when I heal you. When you heal me. I heal my children. We heal the collective. And so coming back to self every time, it aligns with everything that I believe in, but I needed to hear you say it the way you said it. It was very impactful to me, and how coming back to self isn't selfish. It
No.
actually is loving, and not just loving to myself, loving to everyone,
Mhm.
to the collective. And part of that is perhaps loving your fear and looking at
Yeah.
it and shining a light on it. And
Yes.
when I face my fears, I can look back and say every single time that the anticipation of something that never happened
Yeah.
was far more painful
Mhm.
than just looking at it and going. I have done
Yeah.
this with my finances for years. I have a lot of anxiety around money and finances, and security is
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. And it causes me to avoid, because that's my coping mechanism. If something is really overwhelming to me, I pretend like it doesn't exist. But that pretending in itself causes so much more angst than just facing your fear and moving.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated everything that you said about fear, because I'm sure everyone listening can relate to that in some way, and knowing that there is something that is holding you back from stepping into a higher version of yourself. And perhaps that fear is scarier than the actual stepping in, the actual movement of moving forward.
The hardest thing for me around fear was the way that it would affect me and my performance.
Yeah.
And yeah. And that all has, taking time, but again, as I recognize in myself the parts of me that felt unsafe, I can also see, going back further and further into the younger childhood, I guess you could say, that those were just parts of myself that I was not loving. I was denying parts of myself. If there's any part of you that's in denial, it will show up in your life as a struggle, as a limitation. Spiritual expansion is about discovering all of those little limitations, all of those parts of you that are hidden. And as you say, shining the light there and allowing them to either express because they're beautiful and they're part of you, or that there's something that you picked up and you're carrying that's never been yours to begin with, and allowing them to let go. I'm making it sound like it's easy, and it isn't. And I know that those of you who are with us on the live chat and listening after, you can relate that it's not as simple as these words are being said. But it is the process that matters. It is the intention that matters. It is the willingness to understand at first from the intellect that you learned so much of what you think is true. And as those parts of you are questioned, only the good in you is true. And so recognizing that the bad in you is learned or taught or inherited allows you to shine the love of light onto it and just observe it and witness it in recognition that this is not of me. And this is really the process that I use. And as I said, it's probably something that I'm going to be working on perhaps for the rest of my life, because as I say, this is like a becoming, as Danielle said, from burnout to becoming. We are in pursuit of that highest expression of who we are every time we turn towards the heart and we start there.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to share these moments with you today and to connect on our right to be in joy, to be happy, to be in full expression, and to acknowledge the truth that it's not easy to live in the world as it is today and just do what you want. But I think a lot of that needs to change. And I think that, all we can do with the difficult things around us is to bring the best parts of ourselves forward and to, especially as a mother, especially as a caregiver, bringing through to others the beauty, that the humanity. I mean, that's really what's needed more than anything, humanity right now. Yeah.
I love how you said that only the loving parts of us, those are the only things that are real.
That's all that's real. Everything else is not yours. And sometimes sitting in a compassionate practice and just taking a few minutes to put your hands on your chest and to really embody the beauty that's there. The light within you grows, the heart opens. I mean, when you start looking at the yogic philosophies around wheels of energy and the chakra system, there is this understanding that we, being very, very dense in this life, very physical, grounded by gravity. Our first few chakras are really about our physical life, trying to make it in the world, trying to feel safe, taking care of our basic needs. And then as we begin to uncover ourselves, we move into the second chakra. We're really about, we understand, well, I can create, I can make, I can do, I can act, I can say. And so what's happened is, as we move up the chakra system, we come up against the reality, the constructed reality, the man-made realities that start to oppress our spiritual expansion. And so we get a lot of issues energetically around understanding who we are. And so when you can sit in a compassionate practice and you can just acknowledge the true nature that's there, even the little bit, even if it's just a glimpse for you, that's all that you need to enter into a contemplative practice. And as you cultivate that witnessing perspective, it starts to become possible for you to see that you're individuated. Even though we're all connected, you're individuated, and you have your right to set up some boundaries and start to push back when it comes to your spiritual expression, your spiritual knowing, your right to be spiritual. And as you recover your spirituality, what you're really doing is recovering the fulsome self. And you start to feel like you can enter into your life with more grace, more resilience, more patience, more heart, more compassion. And so I really advocate for that. I advocate for people to disconnect from the external world and start to become familiar with the internal. Even if it's hard at first, know that everything that's hard that you face, those thoughts, those discomforts, even the pain in your body, all of those things will soften with your patience and with your willingness to just continue to see what's there.
I had a spiritual vision a few years ago about all the distractions in this world and our phones and social media and busyness, and how that all of those things were placed here as a barrier kind of to keep us from ourselves. It's something that we must overcome. And so that's been one of those things that once I saw it how I saw it, I can't unsee it. And so just learning to live in this world.
It is tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that the future of humanity is happening now. We're in it. Obviously, I mean, it's kind of a silly thing to say, but I guess what I mean is I believe that we're coming home. We're coming back to truth. And I mean, I'm really interested in ancient civilizations and, the ancient texts, and even Jesus. I won't say Christianity per se, but Christ consciousness, mm-hmm. and what that holds for humanity. And I believe that technology is, it's a loaded subject. I won't make any strong opinions there, except to say that we 100% need to be in our sovereignty. We need to be in our dominion. We need to be in our authority and know that every choice is ours. And the more we can align with that personal power, that creative power, and decide how it's going to be collectively, we can steer this entire thing. AI is a big issue and as another topic, but it's just another way that we are being pulled from ourselves. And I think AI is man-made. It's being created by us. And so, conscious AI use is actually helpful. But knowing that there are energetic channels that you're built to access information that moves far beyond the 3D constructed reality. And the more that you learn how to break out of 3D, and I apologize for anybody listening who's like, what the hell is with this 3D and 4D, 5D? Because it's annoying when you are kind of like, that's dumb, or I don't understand that. I'm only saying that because it is some spiritual lingo that a lot of people are familiar with, and finding the language today to speak about some of these things is part of the art. But really, I talk about 3D as that constructed reality. Everything that essentially is running our lives is as a construct. So the wisdom on how to proceed through these times is available to us. and it is ours. And the more that we are able to care for the spirituality, our spiritual growth, the more we're going to start to access that higher knowledge, that higher wisdom. And it just up levels absolutely every aspect of our lives. And it makes us better at everything that we do. And it allows us to bring that beauty back into the world. It's needed so much right now.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot today about some of the spiritual practices that you use: yoga, centering, breath work, meditation. If you could take just one spiritual practice as the one that's been the most impactful in your journey from moving from burnout to where you are now, which practice would that be?
Well, I might be cheating by saying meditation, because meditation can happen in so many ways. You can be in meditation all the time, and through meditation, you can work with your breath. Through meditation, you can regulate the nervous system. Through meditation, you can commune with God or source or the divine or your guiding spirit team. So I would say that when I started to meditate, I found it difficult, like a lot of people would find it difficult, and there's a lot of misunderstanding, I feel, around meditation. I don't think people understand necessarily how to meditate and what's wrong and right. And so I think that, my husband, for example, super heady guy, very cosmic though. He doesn't even know the half of it. I'm like, your chi is like, my husband, like all of us, you just funnel your intellect into the career, but he's also spiritually expanding. I'm very lucky for that we were able to do it together. But he doesn't like to meditate. He prefers to exercise and says it clears his mind. And so for me, it's that managing of the attention that is powerful in meditation.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you in this talk so much. I feel your energy and feel your heart. It's made me teary-eyed several times through this conversation. You are a beautiful soul, a beautiful person, beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Danielle.
My ears are ringing as we're talking. You have so much magic inside of you.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
Everyone to know where to find you at Higher with Jen on Substack.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at Higher with Jen. I have a second Substack called Taz Messages for Humanity that doesn't get a lot of eyes, but I started channeling from higher dimensions just because I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And 2024 is when it started, but I had already been doing a lot of automatic writing at that point. And when I went through essentially a Kundalini awakening, I opened up so wide that it took time for me to come back to my intentions to serve. I had to do a lot of sorting, and so Taz messages for me have been part of my spiritual expansion. And if you're interested in channeled content, you can check that out. And it's actually, for me, talking about channeled material is still really uncomfortable. I think it's, it's one of those things where you're like coming out of the closet and it's scary, but I had strong guidance to share it. And I think it's really beautiful stuff, and it really lights me up. And so I'm going to keep sharing it, and I hope you'll check it out. And I loved that everybody stayed. Shout out to Teresa and Cheryl and Lady Safara and everybody else who just hung out, and catch the vibe. It's been my pleasure to hang out with you, Danielle.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful conversation. I cannot wait to check out your channel texts. That's right up my alley. And
oh, thank you.
share
Well,
it with everybody. Or
yeah, and
we want
let's
you to
take
say the name again of your second.
it's THA, Taw's Messages, because it's the Heavenly Alliance. When I finally asked them for a name, that's the name they gave me. And I really just feel it's a collective of entities that are spirit-based who are wanting to support humanity at this time of great change and challenge.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Jen, thank you so much. I
Thank
have
you,
a feeling
Danielle.
another conversation will be in our books in the
I
future.
love that.
Maybe about channeling or automatic writing, because both of those things utterly fascinate me.
Yay. Yeah. Yeah. It's great stuff. It's so juicy. All right. Bye for
Take care.
now.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.